My name's Jude Crocker from the Parliament website, and over the last 10 days or so we've been drawing in questions from the public via email, Twitter and also through parliamentary outreach activities. These questions, Mr. Speaker, are about you. They are about what you hope to achieve through your speakership. So we'd start off by asking you, Mr. Speaker, David McLean has asked by email how long you have wanted to be Speaker of the House of Commons.
I started to think about the possibility of standing just after the last general election. I was very fortunate to be asked to join the Speaker's panel of chairmen. In that capacity, I chaired bill committees, statutory instrument committees and debates in Westminster Hall. I thoroughly enjoyed the process, and it was around that time that I started to give thought to the idea. And then in the couple of years after that, I firmed up on the idea, and I thought, well, I don't know when it's going to arise. There may or may not be a vacancy in this Parliament, but if there is, I'll have a go for it.
Having worked very hard to win your position as Speaker of the House of Commons, what do you regard as your most important policies that you can put in place, and why?
I'm not sure that it is for the Speaker to have policies as such, and certainly the Speaker has to remain above the fray as far as the great debate on political issues is concerned. The Speaker does, I think, however, particularly in the present context, which is very challenging, have a right and a responsibility to take a view about the interests of Parliament. And the short answer to your question is that my overriding objective is to try to strengthen Parliament, if necessary, at the expense to some degree of the power of the executive. I want a stronger, a more dynamic, a more assertive Parliament in which backbenchers have greater opportunities and in which the legislature holds the executive more effectively to account in the future than it has done in the past.
We had some questions about government ministers making announcements to the press before coming to the House. Do you have any particular views or policies or ideas on that?
I strongly deprecate the idea that a minister should announce a significant public policy to the media before doing so to the House. I said in the course of my campaign and on the day in my speech to the House that once and for all, ministers must be obliged to make key policy statements to the House before others hear those statements. In response to the question, well, how do you bring that about? I think that simply indicating that that is your expectation can concentrate ministerial minds, and I think there's some evidence already that ministers have taken greater care not to release details of ideas or policies before coming to the House. In the event that the convention that I'm seeking to establish, the protocol that I advocate, were breached, it would be possible to summon a minister to explain him or herself and perhaps to deny the minister the opportunity to give a statement at the time of his or her choosing. Instead, one might say that the minister would have to come before the House to take criticism of the way in which he or she had behaved. I hope that won't arise, but I'm certainly very ready to countenance that if people don't play by the rules.
Duncan Cantor from Maidenhead wonders how you will judge your speakership to have been a success. Will you limit your speakership to, say, 2 parliaments?
I will judge it to be a success on the basis of whether I can strengthen Parliament in its relationship with the executive and strengthen the public perception of the effectiveness of Parliament. In other words, in addition to the role within the House, I believe that there is a very important ambassadorial role for the Speaker to get out and about, to meet representatives of voluntary organisations, of public institutions, of all sorts of organisations representing people in different walks of life. And I do want to be a robust, non-partisan, but robust advocate for Parliament and of democratic politics. And I have a whole intended programme in mind to get out into the country, to explain Parliament to the country and to hear from people in the country what they think about Parliament. I do have it in mind to do an absolute maximum of 9 years as Speaker and not a moment longer. I think the House of Commons, the existing House, should then choose a successor.
P. Neil, via parliamentary Twitter, asked what reforms you are going to make to the time it takes to publish MPs' expenses, and will they be published in a format that is easily accessible online?
There are two answers to that. First of all, Sir Christopher Kelly has been deputed to produce recommendations for reform. My view, as I indicated in the course of the speakership election campaign, is that unless Sir Christopher's recommendations are obviously unfair or impracticable, which I very much doubt, we will have to accept those recommendations. Parliament has delayed too long and done too little, and as a result has sacrificed its right to prescribe the nature and detail of the expenses system. We will have to accept an independent recommendation. I would then seek, with parliamentarians from all parties and the party leaders' support, to play my part in giving effect to that new system. At its core must be principles of equity, transparency, audit and accountability. And already the House of Commons Commission, which I chair, has set out over the last couple of days its intentions in terms of publication of details of expenses, including of receipts, for 2008-9 and 2009-10. And those arrangements will be at least as transparent as those for the previous years that have been published, and in some respects will be more transparent. There will be less redaction on receipts. So my guiding principle is we must be open, we must be transparent, we must be accountable.